I think Retrobit's been a little lacking as far as their support for the GameCube. They've done a few products, I give them that. But as far as like new controllers, I haven't seen much, you know? Mostly video stuff. They've done a few other things too in the past, but like one of the things I've been using is the Prism HD adapter from Retrobit. Anytime you see me use GameCube in a video, I'm using HDMI, Prism from Retrobit. Love this thing. Definitely worth checking out. But today, finally, we got a new controller from them, the LegacyGC wired controller for the GameCube, or the Wii if your Wii has the GameCube controller ports. But yeah, this is obviously heavily inspired by the Hori Game Boy Player controller, which is crazy expensive. And I remember a few years back, I was hitting up anybody who would listen, any company that I knew. You guys got to make something like this because that controller is so expensive. And I love playing Game Boy games on my GameCube. And finally, some companies are starting to do it. And Retrobit's one of the latest. So we're going to quickly check this thing out, tear it down, all that good stuff. Check it out real quick. Give you guys my thoughts and impressions on it. I stayed up late last night messing with this to make sure I don't miss anything because while it's a fairly basic controller, there are a few features here, some interesting things that they have done. So we are in this controller test program, and I just want to show you something. So obviously this is going to be a very limited use controller, the types of games that you could play with it. Really, Game Boy Advance is going to be great. You're going to be able to play certain other things as well. But one of the problems is like, hey, we don't have the C stick or the left stick. What if a game solely uses the left stick and then the face buttons and it won't use the D-pad? Well, they have that fixed here. They have an option for that. And I'll show you that in a second. But one thing I noticed, you can change it between D-pad, left stick, and C stick. Every time you plug this in and power it up, it just automatically registers as the left stick. As you see in this test program, it's a D-pad, it's a digital pad, it's not analog, so hitting left or right, up or down, it hits the maximum value immediately. That's just the way it is. Not a big deal, but have to point that out. That's just the way it works, not analog. Now, I love this, and I didn't do an unboxing on video because there's nothing that they added to this box. There's no manual or anything. There's a little thank you card. That's about it. And I love this. I really do love this. All controllers that have macros and functions should have a sticker on the back explaining how to do everything. That way I don't have to look for a little paper. You know, I love this. So we have some macros here to switch the D-pad to D-pad mode, left stick, or C-stick mode. And you'll hold those buttons like starting up for 5 seconds to turn it to D-pad mode, or starting right to turn it to C-stick mode. I'll demonstrate that real quick. So right now it's left stick. If we hold starting up for 5 seconds, you'll see it like swap on there. Like it disappeared off the stick and now it's the D-pad up here, buttons. So with this controller, I didn't think this really made much of a difference, but I do notice it. Any controller that's like Nintendo style that doesn't have the little triangles printed into the D-pad, I think that kind of helps a little bit with grip. And I do miss it when these controllers don't use that. I don't, you know, maybe it's a Nintendo thing. Some companies do still do it. I don't know. But it's not like a slippery pad or anything. The directions each have that slope going down, and it feels good to me. So all the directions register just fine. If I start doing my diagonals, they register fine. And it has that little post in the middle, so you're not going to push this and it registers as everything. It's just going to register one or two directions, depending on, you know, where the pressure is mostly, if you just press it down. So it's not like a funky D-pad. I think this D-pad is probably one of the best things about this controller. Oh, and one other thing with this controller, it does have slanted butt cheeks. Y'all know I like butt cheeks on my controllers. So yeah, you got those there. Kind of helps a little bit with the grip. It's all right. But the one thing I want to point out before we jump into a game and demonstrate it working. Oh, it also does have turbo. I'll show that in a moment as well. But there is one significant difference to me compared to an original GameCube controller. We did do a teardown. I'll show that as well. But all right, let me show you. We have a Wavebird right here. You might be like, okay, this is an older controller. Maybe things are broken in a bit, but let me try to get my mic as close to this. The button feel and press is significantly different between this and the Retrobit LegacyGC. So this, you get, you know, you can kind of hear it a little bit. It's got a nice press to it, a nice feel. And it's not like, oh, it's broken in. This is a new GameCube controller from Nintendo, and it feels pretty similar, almost identical as far as the feel. But here's like just pressing the button, the A button. It's got nice travel, and it just instantly registers. This, the Retrobit controller, the membranes and the buttons, how this is set up, and the components that are used, there's like a very stiff pop to it. That is a big difference. That's the main difference. Layout's the same. Like, there's really not any issue with the layout. It's just the button feel. It's drastically different. It's a very pop, like those little pop fidget toys these little kids are messing around with. That's what it feels like. It's a very stiff pop. Very stiff, but it registers fine. But if that drives you nuts, hey, I mean, I'm just pointing it out. That's the main thing I noticed here. So let's go ahead and play a game real quick. I'll show you, you know, like the turbo button working and doing some Hadoukis and dragon punches and whatnot. But okay, let me get used to the buttons again here. But yeah, I could do my dragon punches. Everything registers just fine. My Hadoukis and dragon punches, I mean. Everything feels good as far as that goes. So now, let me see, turbo. You would press the button and then press it, and now we got turbo. It's not like a crazy, like fast turbo or anything, but it's turbo. You get that turbo functionality. I don't know how fast the turbo is, but it doesn't look like there's any way to change it. And if you want to clear it, hold it, press the clear button. Now the turbo has been cleared. But yeah, this controller, it's a more reasonable priced controller. I believe it's like $20. They sell them on Castlemania Games, maybe a few other places. It's a very basic controller. If I had showed the teardown earlier, I don't know for sure until I edit this, but there's nothing really amazing to see on the inside of this thing. It's very basic. The membranes they use are not the highest quality membranes. They're not as nice as the ones they used in the Big Six. They're a little poppy, a little cheaper looking, I guess. I don't know how to describe it, but it's very basic. Not much to really talk about as far as the inside of the controller. But everything functions and appears to function fine. It's just that feel. If you're looking for the feel of the face buttons to be the same as a GameCube controller, it does not feel the same. That's the main thing. Can you get used to it? Sure. Will it be fine for most people? Probably. But it's just something I have to point out. After having used it quite a bit, that was the main thing I noticed, is how poppy these buttons are. But they register okay, so hey, it's up to you. I think they're fine. There's other options out there. I use like a Super Nintendo controller for the SNES Classic with a RAFnet adapter usually, but that's a little bit more pricey than this. So yeah, it's good to have options. Appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think. Bye.